This is a significant day in the country's management of the pandemic because one of the most significant and recalcitrant COVID leaders, one of the premiers, has finally accepted reality. Let me explain. On this program, as you know, we've been talking about living with the virus for nearly 18 months because we've spoken to experts like Professor Peter Collignon day in, day out since January last year. We've known since very early on that this virus would be with us for the foreseeable future, possibly forever. We've constantly talked about how to live with it. We worried there might not be vaccines or they might take years to be manufactured. But here we are, very fortunate that we can live with the virus now under the protection of vaccines already. We've never advocated letting it rip, as they say. This hasn't really been pushed by anyone. Rather, it's been about striking a balance between priorities like work, livelihoods, education and other health issues as against the task of minimising COVID infections. But some people, many in the media, and sadly many of our political leaders, have somehow continued under the delusion that the virus could be eradicated. They've treated it like Ebola and they've resisted what's been inevitable for a year and a half. That is, that we've got to work out how to live with the virus, not hide from it forever. Here's the Victorian Premier earlier this month announcing another 7-day snap lockdown and still chasing zero COVID.
So I think zero is achievable and I think low numbers are maintainable, but I don't think there's not, until you get to 80% of the community that's had the jab, the notion you could have 20 or 30 cases, like you'd only have that for a day or two. Then it's hundreds, then it's thousands.
Well, as you know, he hasn't got back to zero. He didn't get out of lockdown either, but he continued to believe that he was right, criticising New South Wales and telling other states what to do, insisting that you couldn't live with this disease. 15 days into his 7-day lockdown, he said this.
No, hang on. There's no living with this. The notion that we can just let it all run, there is no I've really got to say, it is so unhelpful. I'm not saying you're doing it, but other people, this narrative, oh, well, we'll just have to live with it.
Well, as I said back then, there's no alternative to living with the disease. We're living with it now, and not very well, given more than half the country is still in lockdown. So the big news today is that the Victorian Premier has finally accepted reality. Well, he's kind of run flat out into it, actually. He's now 26 days into his 7-day snap lockdown, and with 76 extra cases today, he's conceded that zero COVID might be unattainable, and he's planning a change of strategy that amounts to, well, it amounts to living with the disease.
Tomorrow we'll announce thresholds, low numbers that we think we can contain. We'll always push to get them as low as we possibly can. But if, despite our best efforts, zero is not something that we can achieve, I'll make 2 points. It can't be much more than zero. And secondly, we are better off for having chased zero.
Yeah, he chased zero. We would all prefer zero cases, that's beyond question, so long as we're not forced to pay too high a price for it. And so far in this country, we have paid a very high price for these zero COVID dreams. We've been victims of our early success. Too many people have suffered in so many other ways, and the damage done to the country by the pandemic response this year, as vaccines rollouts continue right around the country, well, that damage has actually been greater than the harm caused by the virus itself. Daniel Andrews will outline some new thresholds tomorrow, the numbers of infections at which some restrictions might be lifted for Victorians. They'll get some more liberties back if numbers of infections come down to certain new threshold levels. Now, we can't expect miracles, but finally, he's accepted reality and he's moving in the same direction then as Gladys Berejiklian in New South Wales. How about that? It turns out that Berejiklian was right all along and Andrews is following her.